What's up, guys? Our Wrestling Podcast back at you with another episode. This is Craig the British Bulldog, along with Jess, the Total Package, and Joe and Dave are off this week. And we're bringing you our perspective, right? Screw those guys.
God, finally, Dave's off.
Bringing you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry. God, Dave is so much better than this. Just stories from the diehard, sharing opinions with you. Someone feed me today's topic, please, because I've never done this before.
We are going to do... Oh, go ahead, cuz. Sorry, what did you say there? A little soundbite?
Hey, yo.
We're going to do the legacy of Scott Hall.
And you people know who he is, but you don't know why he's here. Oh, that's fucked up. Never mind.
For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, Soundcloud, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Podcast, or watch our videos. Please watch our videos on YouTube at Our Wrestling Channel. Social media, give us a follow on Instagram or Twitter at O.W.P 2019, Facebook at Our Wrestling Podcast. All right, this is a tough one. This is a new one. This is relevant. This threw everything kind of for a loop with the passing of our good friend and icon, Scott Hall. I'm glad we're doing this. It's timely. So, and by the way, it's not a quest for clicks either, because you know what I've actually enjoyed this past week since he passed is reading all these think pieces on him and watching all these clips, and I'm actively rooting for them. So someone out there, I hope that you're searching on YouTube, and I hope you fondly listen to this, and because it's relevant and timely, and enjoy it. Our perspective on him.
There was stuff that I saw this whole week that I had forgotten about, or I didn't even know even happened, like with him. So I'm gonna jump right in here. We'll do the early life first. Scott Oliver Hall was born on October the 20th of 1958 in St. Mary's County in Maryland. He grew up as an Army brat and moved once every year before he was 15 years old. That's pretty
not true. He was from Miami. He was from Cuba and Miami.
He attended high school in Munich, Germany, West Germany, which is kind of crazy as well. In 1983, after wrestling a gun away from a man in an altercation outside of a nightclub in Orlando, Florida, Hall was charged with second-degree murder after shooting the man with his own gun. According to Hall, this was done in self-defense. The charges were dropped due to lack of evidence, and in a 2011 interview on ESPN, Scott Hall said he was unable to forget the incident. I only throw that in there because that was part of his early life, and as we get into his professional wrestling career and start identifying Scott Hall as we knew him as we started growing up as Diamond Stud, Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, NWO, I really believe this, and they did talk about this in documentaries about him, that this haunted him for his whole life.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how different his life would have been if he didn't do that. You know, taking somebody else's life, even if you're doing it in self-defense, even if you're in war, it doesn't matter. It's got to do something to you.
Yeah.
Or an accident.
Too,
yeah. I mean,
and apparently this is where the guy he shot was his boss at the strip club or bar and he was dating his 19-year-old wife. So he actually did have a relationship with him. It was more than just like a guy that pulled a gun on him. There was a bigger story than that.
Fuck, that's crazy.
But regardless of that, like, yeah, you take a man's life. But of course it was self-defense. Someone's going to pull a gun on you. It's all bets are off after that.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be the one to live to tell the tale, for sure. His early professional wrestling career, Hall began his career in 1984 at the National Wrestling Alliance's Florida territory in Championship Wrestling from Florida, and soon began to feud with Dusty Rhodes, of all people, right away. He was impressive. We're going to talk about his physique and stuff here. He looked totally different than what we knew him as. He had he had long-ish hair, but it was way more curly, and he had a big old handlebar mustache. But he was a big motherfucker. He was like 6'6", 6'7". Got to be walking around muscular, near 300 pounds. Like, the guy was a big motherfucker. He was huge.
Just come out. Well, Jim, tonight I'm going to get out there. And
it's so funny hearing his voice.
That's not a bad Scott Hall, because that's good.
That is really good. And it's I'll put in clips here too of his interviews and stuff. But I was watching a lot of interviews of him, and it's so funny to not hear him with the Razor Ramon affect, or just the Scott Hall affect. Like, he was just talking like a regular babyface. You know, we're all real charged up out here and we're ready to go. And I was like, that's so weird hearing his voice say stuff like that.
Anyone survive that bulldog move of yours?
Well, that's right, Larry. You know, I've been real successful with it so far. Every time I've done it so far, it's been 1, 2, 3. And like you said, Tom Stone's a veteran. He's been around for a long time. He's a tough competitor. He gave me all I can handle tonight.
Let's talk about...
And these fans are going to find out tonight, and...
He and Dan Spivey trained together in Florida, mainly under Rhodes, but also under Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham. When it was time for the two to debut as a tag team, Rhodes sent them to work in Jim Crockett's Charlotte, North Carolina-based territory. They debuted as American Starship. What are we doing? Hall under the ring name Starship Coyote, and Spivey under the ring name Starship Eagle. They were mainly jobbers.
Oh my god!
You don't say.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Are you sure? They weren't PWI Tag Team of the Year for American Starship?
Now
That's
we go
awesome.
into a little bit. Now we're starting to get hot and heavy here. The
That's actually a
American
badass
Wrestling
name.
Association, the AWA. Scott Hall joined the American Wrestling Association in 1985, where he wrestled as Magnum Scott Hall and later Big Scott Hall.
So
he was a
I didn't know
babyface
he
there.
was. I didn't know he was called Magnum, but when I was looking
look
at
at
the
that.
early
I did.
photos
So
of
I
this,
did know this.
Yeah, I
because
remember him as Magnum.
he's perfect Magnum TA.
I
Like he was Magnum TA. They wanted him to be Magnum TA after Magnum TA. Like he looked like
Yeah.
Tom Selleck more than Magnum TA did.
He did.
Yes, yeah, and it's so that never works. WWF tried it later. They would just put the word "new" in front of something, and then that was supposed to revitalize it.
The new
Blackjacks,
Magnum.
the new Rockers.
Yeah.
It never works. It never works. But it's just so funny reading back here in 1985 in a non-Vince McMahon promotion. You still have promoters being like, you know what? He kind of looks like Magnum. Let's call him Magnum Scott Hall, or not. Like, how about we don't do that? Like, we don't draw any attention.
You know what? Let's
at
call
all.
him Bulk Baron.
Yeah. Let's call him
Bulk
Bob
Rogan.
Selleck.
Bulk Rogan. Instead of Hulk Hogan. Yeah.
Oh, you don't like Magnum? Let's call it Bob Selleck. No,
Yeah,
let's
Bob
not do that either. We're not even hot at this point. Vern Gagne, the owner and promoter of the AWA, wanted to push Hall to the same heights as Hulk Hogan following Hulk Hogan's departure.
There you go.
Bitter
Hulk Hogan.
much as Hogan left for Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation.
Never heard of it.
Again, no, how about no, Scott? Like, why are we doing this? Like, why? They want to name him after someone who he looks like, or when someone leaves a territory, they're like, we're gonna make it like Hogan.
Yeah.
Vern even had Hall use mannerisms and moves similar to Hogan. What are we doing? Poor Scott Hall.
You know
Well,
what?
you
It's,
know
it's
something, brothers. All these Hall-o-maniacs tonight.
Hall also traveled to Japan, where he wrestled several matches for New Japan Pro Wrestling. All the greatest wrestlers go to Japan. I've said it before. He did that between 1987 and 1990. Hall formed a tag team with the more experienced at the time friend Kurt Hennig, who we've never heard of after this. Just kidding. Whom he would later credit for cultivating his early professional wrestling career. Amen to that, Kurt Hennig. I did watch a video too, actually, in kind of brushing up on all things Scott Hall this week too, where he was sitting in front of his TV and he was watching this was a few years ago, where he was paying tribute to Kurt Hennig. I don't know if it was an anniversary of his death day or something like that. But he was really talking about how like Kurt really influenced his career, and he taught him almost everything he knew. And Kurt told him how to slow down on the ring and get your mannerisms and your expressions and all that stuff. And so that was kind of a cool thing to watch. So Kurt Hennig, a huge influence on Scott Hall's early career, especially.
Propel you and Kurt to the top of the tag team ratings.
Well, that's what we're after, Ken. We're on our way to the top. We know there's a lot of good competition here in the AWA, and that's what we're after. The Freebirds, they're a high-flying team. They call themselves the Fabulous Freebirds. Well, we call ourselves the Dream Team. Freebirds, gear up. We think we're going to give you more than you can handle.
Fabulous Freebirds, take a good hard look at what you got. All right, wrestling fans, remember that Kurt Hennig, Big Scott Hall. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
That tag team defeated Jimmy Garvin and Steve Regal. No, not that Steve Regal. For the AWA World Tag Team Championship on January the 18th, 1986, in a 58-minute match in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Let me tell you why that's fucking hilarious. It never happened. So I went back and researched the title change on there, and I found another match where they defeated, in a non-title bout, they defeated Jimmy Garvin and Steve Regal, but it was non-title. Then I go back and I look when they actually won it on Wikipedia. I was looking at the history, and the notes on the side said it was a match that never happened. So they just said it happened in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That happened a lot back in the day, by the way, where shit just didn't happen. Rio de Janeiro happened everywhere.
Yeah, Rio de Janeiro.
Because Steven Regal left the promotion without losing the titles. So kind of right in the middle of their program. So they're like, fuck, let's just lie and say that there was a match that happened.
Steve Regal, and for once it backfired. Look at Hall, bulldog. He bulldog Regal. That's it, it's over. Holy smoke, it's over. The spray can backfired, and look at Hall and Hennig. This arena has erupted. It's erupted. A sellout.
And let's say it was 58 minutes, and let's say it was in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
It's just bad for the sport, you know? That's good. It makes it seem like it's not legitimate. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you have these fake matches.
So they were. So, I mean, Scott Hall gets his first major goal here because AWA, a lot of people don't remember it. AWA was a really, really big deal in the 80s, especially early to mid 80s. After that title reign ended, Hall would challenge Stan Hansen and Rick Martel at different times for the AWA Heavyweight Championship in losing efforts. Although Vern wanted to put the belt on Hall, Hall hated the cold weather in the territory, which was Minnesota, and recognized AWA as a sinking ship in 1989, and he left for the NWA. Pretty smart call there on Mr. Hall's part. NWA WCW now we get into. Hall was brought into NWA Championship Wrestling territory by Jim Ross in 1989 as part of the NWA's initiative to start to develop young stars. You know,
pretty spectacular looking body.
It's really fun. We need to get some young studs in here. Jim Ross would ultimately be credited as being head of talent relations in the WWF later during the Attitude Era.
Right.
And absolutely, like, his vision came to fruition when he was responsible for bringing in the Mick Foleys, the Vaders, Steve Austin, all those guys in, because he really, Rocky, he brought in. It was just, you know, it's so funny. Jim Ross was trying to do it even back here, and WCW didn't even know who they had working for them. Not only just the greatest play-by-play of all time, but somebody who really knew young talent and was like, dude, we got to fucking freshen up this roster. We got to. And they were like, no, we'll just make Oz and shit. So that's...
You see that big guy Scott Hall over there?
You guys, Mr. Hurd, Mr. Hurd.
Mr. Hurd, yeah.
Mr. Hurd, a guy looks like Magnum. He looks just like Magnum.
Me?
Oh, wait till you see this. So he made his debut on June 3rd edition in 1989 of World Championship Wrestling, which was the predecessor to WCW Saturday Night, and a vignette that showed Scott Gator Hall.
Hell yeah.
He's Gator.
Scott Gator Hall swimming and playing volleyball at the
Gators
beach,
bitches better be winning
riding in
gyms.
boats, fishing, and scaring alligators. He scared alligators. Hey, boo. Like, just and then alligator like runs out of the water. Like, what are we doing with this guy? He's so physically impressive. But again, here, he was not the Diamond Stud yet, mind you. He still had the mustache. Yeah. He still just kind of had the curly hair or whatever. So they were trying to use him here. After primarily being used as a jobber. That's right. Scott Gator Hall.
No wonder a lot of these guys, when they get the power to say no, are like, I'm not doing that. Because they eat so much shit their first, like, whatever, when they just have to nod and do whatever. Like, what has he been through now? Gator?
Yeah, it's
such a good point because back here, especially, they're living out of their fucking cars. Pretty much in like every literal sense of that phrase. Like they were living like hotel to hotel, paycheck to paycheck, sometimes not even having enough money to eat. Like Stone Cold would do. He said he would eat raw potatoes and tuna.
Yeah, raw potatoes.
He did that for a long ass time because that's all he could afford. So finally when they get power, they're gonna be like, I'm not losing to that guy. And we, you know, as fans, we look back, well, what a selfish fucker.
Yeah.
It's like, but you have no idea. Like every time he gets going, he's like, dude, okay, I'm really tall. I'm really good looking. I know I'm super built or whatever. And then you got a promoter going, you know what? You look like a gator. It's like, no, I don't look like fuck.
I own 3 shirts. I'm not cutting the fucking sleeves off my shirts.
Jim. Like, that's what he should have said, like, you know?
After primarily being used as a jobber on house shows, big surprise, Hall finally gained his first victory on June 29th when he pinned Rip Morgan and Salisbury, Maryland. Sorry, excuse me. I was like trying to scroll my
Salisbury steak.
Salisbury steak. My mouse froze. And then entered a successful house show series with Bill Irwin. So at least he had some kind of positive. They seemed like they were trying to use him for good instead of evil.
Fucking went from scaring gators to fighting Steve Irwin's brother, Bill Irwin.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking crocodile hunter. Mm-hmm. That's why you got that promo, or that's why that story became. He's all
you're
fucking scaring the crocodiles, Mike.
It's probably one of the most like intricate storylines ever, and we're laughing
most
at
complex,
it and on it.
Underrated.
But it probably had the best thought into it. So then on his television debut finally came on the July 9th edition of World Championship Wrestling, where he was pinned by the Great Muta. Then on July 9th, the edition of WCW Pro, he faced Terry Funk and got beat there too.
That might be a little bit.
No, Terry Funk, come on. His pay-per-view debut at the Great American Bash, Glory Days. So his Scott Hall's pay-per-view debut came at WCW Great American Bash 1989 Glory Days, where he participated in a King of the Hill Battle Royal I thought that was just TNA exclusive King of the Hill shit. He then began jobbing regularly and losing to the Great Muta, Mike Rotunda, Sid Vicious, Ron Simmons, Butch Reed. His final match came on November the 7th of 1989 when he was defeated by Butch Reed at a house show in Chicago. After this, he went on hiatus, probably to cry. He did go back to Japan, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and brief tours of Puerto Rico and Germany. Hall would return to WCW again on April of 1991. He was renamed the Diamond Stud and was managed by Diamond Dallas Page and made his first appearance on May the 19th, 1991 at Super Brawl 1. I want to stop right there because Diamond Dallas Page, even recently, before Hall got sick, by that I mean, falling and then getting a blood clot and all that stuff, and went to the hospital, they were just, there's a podcast that Jake Roberts and Diamond Dallas Page do, hosted by, you guessed it, Conrad Thompson, called DDP Snakebit. And it's really good. It's only it's a what is that? What's the free video service? Not the free video service they do.
Ad free?
They do. Yeah, ad free. It's only on ad free. They don't do it on audio at all. So you can only get it on video, but they do release like 14, 15-minute segments on YouTube. And I was watching one where they were talking about DDP calling Hall up and saying, hey, I'm going to go talk to Dusty. He's got the book again out here because Dusty just returned from WWF here. And Dusty's like, oh, no, baby. Like, we tried bringing him in, leaving out the point that we named him Magata and we tried to make him Magnum. And we tried to do all this other bullshit. But he's like, we already had him here or whatever. And he just didn't get over. He's got, like a good look and stuff to him, but he's just not money. And then DDP was like, all right, okay, Dusty, just give me a second. Let me call Scott. Let me work some things out. I'll call you back. So he calls Scott Hall and he says, look, this is what Dusty said about you. And Hall was like depressed. And he just goes, look, here, what if we totally change your look? What if we totally, and this is DDP talking to Scott Hall, like it's kind of crazy, like the way Diamond Dallas Page played into a lot of people too back here. And he was like, what, shave off your mustache, you keep your hair growing out, let's straighten it a little bit, let's dye it jet black. Like no other wrestler has like jet black hair. Like all other like wrestlers like will have like blonde hair or short hair or whatever. He's like, I want your hair jet black. And Scott's like, okay, I'll do it. I'll do whatever, man. If you can get me a job there in Atlanta with you, that would be great. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna try to pitch you as like, in my Diamond Mind, I'm, DDP. I'm gonna have the Diamond Mind stable and all that stuff, and I want you to be like the Diamond Stud. We'll just reveal you, and you'll just be huge and muscular and imposing. You'll have jet black long hair. You'll just have stubble. Don't shave everything totally clean. Just have stubble, like a stubble beard. And he goes, okay. So he calls Dusty. He convinces Dusty to do it. They bring him in. The rest is history. His debut match, he squashed Tommy Rich on the June 14th episode of Clash of the Champions. After a few months, he was once again placed on the lower end of the card, often losing to other talent. But I say this is a little bit more important because they didn't try to name him, as somebody who scared gators. They didn't try to name him after Magnum. They didn't try to do anything here. They came up with something original. Yes, it kind of ended up what he was doing before, but I have to say, we all know who he looked like when he was the Diamond Stud and who he would become just a few short months later.
Yeah, exactly.
In the WWF. So it's kind of crazy that the seeds for Razor Ramon were kind of planted here. Like Hall's vision and DDP's vision was kind of that going that way. And Hall's look definitely looked familiar. I went back and watched some stuff from like, WCW Pro and stuff of Diamond Stud beating up on prelims. And I couldn't tell, if I didn't know that he was wrestling on a WCW mat, I couldn't tell the difference.
Diamond Dallas Page keeps egging him on, making him do more. The Diamond Death Drop, he called it.
He sure did.
Good name.
The Triple D.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's your winner, the Diamond Stud.
Between the Ramon look and that look. And that's kind of crazy. Like the way everything has to happen for a reason. You get one of your friends in your ear just saying, just fucking shave your mustache off, change your whole look. I just found it fascinating that DDP was that involved and that intricate. And those minor changes ended up becoming major changes to Hall's career. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
After an injury sidelined him from Starrcade in 1991, Hall entered 1992, forming short-lived tag teams with Vinny Vegas, of course, at the bottom of the card, which he started teaming with Kevin Nash and Scotty Flamingo, which everybody knows Scotty Flamingo as Raven.
Raven.
They were also part of the Diamond Mine stable for a little while, so DDP managed all of them as like a little prelim faction kind of.
NXT.
Forgotten factions right
Diamond
there.
Mine. Diamond Mine, NXT.
Yeah. Hall left WCW shortly after. Hall left WCW shortly after his televised match against Ron Campbell on May the 8th of 1992. Then we jump in here to the World Wrestling Federation. Scott Hall joined the World Wrestling Federation in late May of 1992 as Razor Ramon, a shady and stylish Cuban-American bully from Miami. The character was modeled after characters Tony Montana from the 1983 film Scarface. Patterson and McMahon came up with the name Razor, but agreed with Hall's suggestion that it should be just a nickname, that shouldn't just be his only name.
Well, and so you got to remember a funny little story about that too. Remember, Scott actually asked Vince if he's ever seen Scarface, and he said no. and then he kind of like almost like it was like his own creation, the character. He's like, "Oh, I'm the bad guy," and then Vince like, "I love it, pal." Like, you know, and he basically acted like Tony Montana, and Vince had no idea what that movie was.
So Vince is like, "Wow."
But Scott Hall said he's like, "I didn't think it was going to work." And so that's pretty much what he said. He's, "I didn't think it was going to fly." And they were like, "We never heard of Scarface," and blah blah blah. So. Yeah, it was a funny little story. I bet it's
good because what if Vince shit on it right then and just goes, "No, that's too much like Scarface, pal." Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, the fact exactly. He didn't see it might have helped him.
Yeah, exactly.
Or he literally would have just said, "No, you know that I'm a guy that likes one names. I like Razor. It's Razor."
Well, that's what they said here. Well, that they came up with Razor, by itself, and they just wanted to call him the Razor.
Yeah.
And but Hall said, "No, I think that should be my nickname. It should be a more full, proper name." Hall later then asked Tito Santana for a Latino-sounding name that starts with an R, and Santana suggested Ramon. Hall brought it back to McMahon, and the name
and it's
stuck.
Weird that he didn't go Rodriguez. Ramon is the one that he went with.
Yeah, Razor Rodriguez. I mean, he could have gone either way.
What's a good
like if Tito wanted to fuck him over, he's like, "Oh yeah, man, Rodriguez." Like make it as long as possible.
No, what if Tito just got
Ramon?
What if Tito got jealous? He's like, "What's a good Hispanic name with starts with an R?" He's all, "Tito." No, it starts with an R. It starts with an R. Santana. Razor Santana. Rantana. Rito. Razor
Ricardo. And he's like, "No, it can't be Ricardo. It's already been done."
What about Ramirez?
No. Ramirez.
Ramon. So he brought it back to McMahon. The name stuck. The Razor Ramon logo and costume were designed by Tom Fleming. I've heard his name briefly in the past as somebody who's designed costumes for a lot of them too. But it's iconic because of the fact that we all remember the Razor, with Ramon's name on it. That was his graphic. The razors on his tights.
Yep.
And he really, right then, he just became iconic, really. And we didn't even know it back then.
And not to mention the entire illusion and symbolism of the razor blade is to cut cocaine. So that's already like edgy as hell.
Yeah.
Like,
and in the picture behind you, Craig has a gold razor around his neck too, which is very convenient for cutting cocaine.
I love it.
Razor's first major angle didn't begin with prelims like in WCW or lower card talent or whatever. On September 14th episode of Primetime Wrestling, he interfered in a WWF Championship match between champion Randy Savage and challenger Ric Flair, attacking Savage on the floor and enabling Flair to win the title for a second time. As a result, Razor and Savage started a feud, which later evolved into the Ultimate Warrior and Savage teaming together against Flair and Ramon after the Warrior saved Savage from a post-match beating by Razor. Razor and Flair were scheduled to face the Ultimate Maniacs of the Macho Man Randy Savage and Ultimate Warrior at Survivor Series 1992. The Warrior was fired from the WWF prior to the event and replaced by Flair's executive consultant, Mr. Perfect, who had been inactive for a little while due to a back injury. Ramon and Flair lost to Savage and Perfect via disqualification for constantly double teaming them.
Razor and Flair wait a minute, what's going on? Well, Perfect has given up. He's given up, I believe. No, there's got to be a disqualification here. For what? Complete figure four leg lock. The match is over. The match is over. Razor and Flair would not leave the ring. We had two officials in there. Break those legs like a drumstick. Kick him. Macho Man Randy Savage still knocked unconscious. Oh, no. Oh, no. It looks good, don't it? It looks perfect.
I remember this match too. Not the best. At the end of '92, the WWF was in a state of flux. I've said it many times before. But since we're focusing on Scott Hall, you kind of have to realize that Scott Hall sort of came in right at the tail end of that first big boom period. When WWF started to get weak, he was in there with guys like the Warrior and Savage and Ric Flair and the Undertaker and all those guys like and Piper and even Brett back here and Hennig. So it's just kind of crazy. He has that link with that generation that I grew up with, when I started becoming a fan.
And he was inserted with big names, and they gave him the ball, and he ran with it because,
right away. Like
he
right
wasn't
away,
a
he was like
jobber
a
or
top heel.
anything, you know, in the beginning. He was just fucking, and then the Intercontinental title and everything after, you know. So, and yeah, it shows how talented he is too, though. And that anyone, whether it's Vince, Jim Herd, or Jim Crockett, or you know, anybody, they see the talent in him, even though, you know, the other guys saw, you know, coyotes and crocodiles in him, but
yeah. I mean, and that's Vince is a star maker, right? Like, so
he is.
They couldn't get past the finish line and all these other gimmicks of his. Vince probably was a guy that was on set. He became his project and he micromanaged every little thing with Razor. And when Razor started to contribute, like, I can be this guy. And that's what got over. Like, it just took a little, like, hate him all you want. But like when man was passionate and lived and breathed building his guys and his gimmicks, like, it would work. Like, they would fail 100% or succeed 100%. Razor was one that like worked together. And
let's not forget too the vignettes too. You know,
it had a shitload of
all
vignettes.
Oh my gosh, yes,
fucking great vignettes.
The vignettes,
the
the pushing the guy
leading
in the fountain, in the fountain was like one of my favorite ones. Like, how could I? Yeah, I totally forgot to put that in my notes.
I like the one where he's sitting at a table and some chick came up to him and she's like, "You're not gonna call me?" He's no, get out of here. And he's you see her? He's like, her heart is probably scarred for life. But no.
It was such a tiny moment, but every time he came out on Superstars, he would give the chain to the ring attendant. He goes, "Something happened to these chains, man. Something gonna happen to you." And it's a little moment, but it's just fucking brilliant. And it's the little things that add up.
Ramon. Razor Ramon. I come from the gutter. I know that. I got no education. Who needs it? Look at me. Look at me. Look at the gold. Look at my clothes. I'm a success.
And looking back too, like all the promoters before are so afraid to push a guy just because he's big. They were all scared of it. I mean, the Crockett's, Vern, all those people are just like, but do they have a real wrestling background though? Are they going to screw me over though? Yeah. Like, and when he gets to WWF, Vince is like, he checks all of my fucking boxes. Yeah. He's 6'6", 6'7", 300 pounds. He's good looking. He can talk. He can walk. He can wrestle. Like, so Vince is just like, he's larger than life. Of course I'm going to use him.
It's attention to detail. The other fucking old grizzled territory guys are like, just fucking handle your shit out there. Just figure it out. Yeah. But like Vince is like, no, it's going to be the fucking details. And here's the details.
All those Bruce Pritchard produced fucking skits that we just talked about, the vignettes, is so important.
You will do that toothpick. Iconic. You will do that eyebrow. You will do that thing with the ring attendant. You will, yeah,
it's amazing. And Hall carried the ball and ran with it for sure. WWF World Champion at the time, Bret Hart was scheduled to defend his title against the Ultimate Warrior originally at Royal Rumble 93, but because the Warrior was terminated a couple months before, Razor Ramon replaced the Warrior after he left the company. Razor lost to Hart at the Royal Rumble in a very good match, by the way, submitting to the Sharpshooter.
Really good, one of the best non-Rumble matches of like that decade.
A bow and arrow turned the big guy over, but Bret couldn't hold him.
He's slapping on him.
He's got the Sharpshooter. He's got that leg twisted around.
No.
All he's got to do is stand up here.
No.
And get that momentum.
He's got him.
He's got him. Yes, it's over.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Yeah, I encourage anybody to go back and watch Razor Ramon against Bret Hart from Royal Rumble 93. That is an excellent match, and it just shows that, like, it shows how great Bret is and he can work with anybody, but it showed that Ramon Scott Hall was here and he was dead serious. Not only was he getting the push from Vince, but he was like, oh, I can get in there with these guys and I can go. And Bret has said his favorite match with Ramon was basically the 93 match at Royal Rumble and the King of the Ring tournament match he enjoyed with Ramon later that year. Ramon and him just had really, really good chemistry. Excuse me, a little belch there. On the May 17th episode of Monday Night Raw, he suffered an upset loss to then jobber The Kid, who consequently became known as the 1-2-3 Kid, beginning a feud between the two. This was easily one of the most memorable moments in Raw history. We got to kind of pause again there. Yeah. I remember I remember half-assed watching that Raw because, like, you know, when you see a prelim in there, I'm like, Ramon's just going to beat him handily. And I was probably
because the
sticking around.
kid had been destroyed for like a couple of weeks before that too.
Yes.
I think on Raw.
Yeah.
Like,
and I recognized the Lightning
jobber.
kid from like Global and all that stuff. So I knew the kid from the magazines. And so I saw him on WWF television. I thought it was cool. And you know, he's just a little skinny guy, like looked like me back then, like basically. So yeah, you thought he was just going to be a jobber. And when he came out here and took on Ramon, I had no idea what I would see. When he did that back moonsault off the top rope and hit Ramon and the ref's hand hit 3, go back and watch that. It really is like this amazing moment where the crowd, people were putting their hands on their head and they're going, what the fuck? Like, and it was just kind of crazy. McMahon's like, he's up on that octave. And like, it was, I'll never forget it. It's not only one of the most famous Raw moments in my wrestling fandom all these years, I will always remember that moment. That is a moment I can never forget.
And I think Razor stays. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3. What is this? He got him. He got him. Can't believe he beat Razor Ramon. Look at that. He beat Razor Ramon. He beat Razor Ramon. Razor Ramon got beat. He got beat.
It was just, it's etched in my mind.
And he didn't have to do it, and it made both of them, and it never really hurt Ramon at the end of the day. Like, what a fucking perfect,
right?
like, but there's 1,000 guys that would have never done that.
Actually, yeah. Probably every single guy in that locker room would have said no, except for Scott Hall, like, who just understood the shock of that. And then on top of that, they do something genius right here. He had already kind of started to get like support from the crowd before that because he's funny. You know, he's just over the top rope, like, hey, man, like, and all that, something going to happen to these chains, something going to, and you laugh at it after a while. So you boot him at first, but then you're like, he's 6'6", 6'7", probably more solid 6'7" than anything.
Yeah.
You know, and 285 pounds, like, and you're just like, why do I not like this guy? He's funny as shit. Like, he's a walking cartoon character. Like, he just makes me laugh with this, you know, the affect he would do with his voice and everything.
And
Daddy, I want a foam razor blade. Okay.
First ever Raw.
Speaking of turning face now, Ted DiBiase showed no respect for Razor Ramon, making fun of him for losing the match as such a small jobber like the kid. Ramon helped the kid defeat Ted DiBiase, solidifying his face turn. The feud culminated at SummerSlam 93 in an opening match where Ramon defeated Ted DiBiase in DiBiase's final WWF match. But I remember that night as well, too, because that pop from that crowd, they were completely behind Razor Ramon. Vince had to have known right then, like, my God, I got a total face on my hands.
Star.
This is fucking crazy. Like, yeah, it was awesome.
Max Hogan.
On October the 4th, the 1993 episode of Monday Night Raw, and a 20-man battle royal was held. The last two participants would face each other in the following week. Are you serious, dogs, right now? Would you stop? The winner of this battle royal would face each other in the following week for the vacant WWF Intercontinental Championship because Shawn Michaels was suspended for failing a drug test about a month before, or a couple weeks before. The final two participants.
What, you talking about Shawn Michaels did? Shawn Michaels?
Yeah, Shawn Michaels. Who did I say?
No, I didn't think Shawn was a drug guy.
Oh, I know. It's weird.
Oh.
I never normally associate bad news with Shawn Michaels, but however, that just came right out of my mouth that Shawn Michaels either misbehaved or failed a drug test. It's weird. I don't
want to die, Sean. I don't want to die.
So with Razor Ramon and Rick Martel being the final two in that battle royal, on the following week on Raw, they would face each other for the vacant Intercontinental Championship, and Razor Ramon pinned Rick Martel after a razor's edge to win his first WWF Intercontinental Championship. Another fantastic moment that I invite everybody to go back and watch. The crowd went apeshit.
Feel the momentum shifting. The fans yelling, shouting. Here we go. Oh, no. Do something, Rick. Look at this Martel trying to muscled him up. And he muscled him up. That's right. Here it comes, ladies and gentlemen. There's almost no way out of this. Here comes the Razor's Edge. Step to step. We got a new champion. 1, 2, 3. He did it. Give him credit. The bad guy comes from way down in the gutter. All the way to the top rung of the line. I've got chills right now with my spine. I'm sick to my stomach.
When Razor won the title. Razor began a feud with Shawn Michaels over which man had the stronger claim to the Intercontinental Championship. Michaels had been stripped of the title, obviously. We just mentioned that, due to inactivity, when in real life he was suspended for failing a drug test.
We know what it was.
They didn't play that in the storyline. He returned to television with his own belt, claiming he was still the Intercontinental Champion, hence the 2 belts that you see at WrestleMania 10. So he challenged Ramon for it and to a match at WrestleMania in a ladder match for the undisputed Intercontinental Championship with both Intercontinental belts hanging above the ring. This match was terrible. It didn't revolutionize anything.
No.
I mean, what do you say about
Throwaway.
this? This match was critically acclaimed and was voted as Match of the Year in 1994 by the readers of Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine, and I'm pretty sure it was Match of the Year by the readers of Wrestling Observer as well. It was also the first WWF match to receive a 5-star rating from sports journalist Dave Meltzer.
Cuz, could you give Dave Meltzer explaining the rating of the Razor Shawn ladder match?
He's like, I can't believe it. I have to give WWF a 5-star. It's not even the Tokyo Dome. What are we doing here? There you go.
Well done. Shut the newsletter down. We can't do this anymore.
Shut the newsletter.
Fucking, I hate Vincent's cartoon.
How am I
shit.
gonna make my money if I can't trash them?
I mean, Razor's already had the moment with the kid, one of the greatest moments of Raw, where you made someone smaller and kind of brought in the rise of the little guy, right? And then now they did not invent the ladder match. That still goes to Bret Hart. It was his idea back in, I think,
Stampede,
Calgary
right?
with Shawn. But to have it on this stage, and it revolutionized what
It was Stampede.
Decades later, what they still do every year now, and what they've opened Mania with, and have 10 guys doing it, and TLC and Money in the Banks. This was the first and best, and it was incredible. You go back and look, and Dave Hebner has to stand on the ladder because it's going to fall apart when he gets the belt. They didn't know to have like multiples. They did for the second one. I think there was a second one under the ring.
Funny
but like,
to watch it evolve.
To watch it evolve and to watch the danger of it, and to pull all of that out in what was the first one. It was phenomenal. It was life-changing.
And at WrestleMania?
One of the best. Seriously.
Yeah. And
like
you do have Bret and Owen in WrestleMania
all the stars
10,
aligned.
But this still.
I was just
going to
say that it overshadowed Bret versus Owen that opened the card, and it was fantastic that match.
I'm gonna get mad.
Get out of there, Shawn! He's out! He's out! He's out! No, he's out! Come on, referee!
Yes! 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 Yes!
I cannot believe it, Ramon!
Is the undisputed Intercontinental Champion!
That's why I'm like, you know what, Meltzer, you can't even get that one a 5-star either. Like, come on, like, fucking
no.
And I hate to say it, I think
no. What about me, my brother Owen? We got a 5-star match, didn't we, Dave?
And it even overshadowed the main event, with Yoko and Bret, which was excellent as well.
That
So
was
like
actually
you
a
had
good
two
match,
other great matches on that card. It could have easily been just okay and clunky or whatever and fine, but it wasn't. It literally revolutionized wrestling going forward. Everything that we saw from the
Savage
TLC.
Steamboat, to be honest.
This match is the reason why there's all the high spot matches now, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it all evolved from there, you know. I mean, I know
TLC,
there's hardcore matches.
The Money in the Bank pay-per-view is based off Ramon and Shawn's ladder match.
And that's Jericho's idea, the Money in the Bank. But yeah, exactly.
Right, but I mean, like they brought the ladder into that. Like, you're right.
The
And you know
roots
what
are
the
from
coolest
this
fucking
match.
part was? Is that fear, like you're not supposed to walk under the ladder because it's bad luck.
Yes.
And Ramon, like when he walks down, he's facing the ladder. He goes, "Fuck it, man," and goes.
He did his glide. He did his glide too as he went down the ladder, which was awesome. Razor would lose the Intercontinental Championship to Diesel, but would win it back at SummerSlam 1994 on August the 29th of 1994. Probably to that date, Nash's best match that he's ever been in. They were obviously grooming Nash for different things, but, you know, again, Ramon was part of Kevin Nash's rise to the WWF Championship. He would lose the Intercontinental Championship to Jeff Jarrett at the Royal Rumble of 1995. However, he would win it back from Jeff Jarrett in a ladder match at a house show on May 19th, 1995 to win the title. to win the Intercontinental title for the third time, which was a record. Only to lose it back to Jeff Jarrett in another house show on the same house show 3 days later. I'm not a big fan of that. I think it makes titles look silly, but I know back in 1995 they had to do it because business was down in general. The wrestling world was not on fire, so they had to change titles at house shows to
Sad Jeff Jarrett goes,
Yeah,
and then Jeff Jarrett goes,
Yeah.
And whenever Jeff Jarrett says something that Jeff Jarrett doesn't like what
mood
Jeff
of
said,
Jeff
he goes,
Jarrett?
Yeah.
Jeff Jarrett wins the title. Jeff Jarrett loses the title. Oh,
Yeah. So just say that you don't like that. You didn't like all that back and forth.
I don't like that back and forth at house shows. But it happened, and it allowed Razor Ramon to win the Intercontinental Championship for a record at the time, third time. He and Michaels would have a ladder rematch for the Intercontinental Championship at SummerSlam 1995, where Michaels would defend his title and come out the winner, where Ramon won it at WrestleMania 5. To some, this match was just as good as our Mania 10 match.
Razor starting to move. And he got it. He got it. He got it. Wow. Wait a minute. Look at Razor. Razor, what's going to happen? Razor grabs Intercontinental Championship belt. Hit him. Hit him. Stop it. Why? We've seen an extraordinarily athletic event here. Razor spins Shawn Michaels around. Come on, hit him, hit him, hit him. Razor hands him the Intercontinental Championship belt. Look at this. Yes. That's what it's all about. Oh. That's what it's all about.
We recently
I'm not going to say anything here because we did an episode on Does It Hold Up or Which Is Better, number 1 or number 2, and I can't remember what I said. So in my mind, I still think the WrestleMania 10 is better, but I'm afraid for someone to go, actually, Craig, on that episode, you said the second one was better.
No, actually,
so
you
you're
don't
full
remember
of shit.
because you weren't on it. It was just me, cousin Dave.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
good.
You're such a liar, Craig. See?
Good. So then
actually, and
I love
actually,
then in my head, WrestleMania 10
it's why
is a
he
better
doesn't
match.
remember. It's like Craig was
good.
right there.
I had said the SummerSlam one was better.
Dave,
I liked it better.
Dave said he likes the Mania 10 match, but Cuz and I both kind of had similar notes where we were like, going into the when I sent them the notes, Cuz even said the same thing. Cuz was like, oh, in my mind, I wasn't even going to watch the SummerSlam match because I was just going to say WrestleMania 10 is better. But I watched it too, and we both watched it separately, not together. We both watched it separately, and we both came in going like, that fucking match was really good, and it was more of a progression from their first match. It's amazing how in a short amount of time, in like a year and a half span, that they learned from their first match and
it was more
better.
violent. And it was
more violent. Yeah, I would say that's the best way.
More aggressive.
If you look at their Mania 10 match, maybe that was a little bit more polished, but their SummerSlam 95 match was a lot more raw looking and violent. And I prefer that.
It looked more real.
Like that.
It literally looked more real. Everything with the ladder, it wasn't so, some fake, like when Jeff Hardy like bounces with it, like stuff like that. It was like, it looks like real guys fighting. And what would happen if one of them climbed up a ladder? Shawn Michaels' leg gets caught in the rung, stuff like that. Like,
and you're
was
treated
really
to a Shawn Michaels tantrum in this match too. So again,
does he get mad at Razor or the?
No,
ladder?
he gets mad at the ladder because the ladder kept fucking. It was the ladder was broken.
Pissed.
He's a
and
bitch.
so like and at first
He's
they
like,
had
you fat piece of shit.
Yeah, they remember because they when they put the IC belt up, they fucking hoisted it up too high. So from the beginning of the match, he's yelling at him to take it down.
And then it was WrestleMania 10 when he wanted it to turn around?
No, that was SummerSlam.
That was the SummerSlam.
WrestleMania 10 went off without a hitch. There was no Shawn Michaels tantrum. Everything went perfect. In 95,
because it was where the belt, because
he
he couldn't rip it down the way it was. It was upside down.
Well, and it wasn't facing the hard
camera. It was too high. Yeah,
and it wasn't facing
Shawn
the hard
Michaels
camera. And it was too high. So he made him take it down. He got mad. He threw a tantrum. And then at the end, he threw a tantrum as well because the ladder didn't fucking work or something like that. And it fell over. The supports broke. They used the ladder and they broke the metal supports. Michaels got pissed.
He cut short the career of Big Van Ladder, just like he did Big Van Vader.
Big Van Ladder.
It was called Big Van Ladder. That's the nickname for that.
And for those out there that didn't understand Cuz's fat piece of shit reference, that's Shawn Vader.
That's why he was yelling at the ladder too.
But yeah, I'm definitely going to put a clip of that match.
This ladder guy, Vince, can't work.
Ladder match in here. He would win the Intercontinental Championship for the fourth time which is a record again, and for the final time from Shane Douglas at In Your House 4 on October the 22nd, 1995, in actually a pretty shit match, to be honest.
Poor Shane.
Again, it was because Shawn Michaels had to give up the title because he got beat up by Marines in a bar, so he had to forfeit the title. Shawn's linked to all kinds of bullshit, but you know what? Somehow Ramon always capitalized. Like,
Down the canvas. 1, 2, and the count of 3. What? I can't believe it. Wait a minute. Oh, Razorhead was his arm across him. That's all it takes, but whose shoulders are down here? Who won the match? Oh, wait a minute. I think Dean Douglas had his arm across Razor. Let's get the official decision. The winner of the match and Intercontinental Champion, Razor Ramon. Wow. What?
He gets suspended the first time, then he was able to beat Martel to win his first IC title. Michaels has to give it up here because he was gallivanting and pissing off Marines in the bar.
No problem, Sean. I'll take it from here. Don't worry. And he turns around. He's giving the Marines money. So you guys go.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for that.
Hey, yo.
Like, you didn't know the whole time. Yeah.
Pop him in his
You see
orbital,
that
man,
little
right in
prima
his-
donna over there? You
break
go
his
beat his
eye.
ass.
You go beat that skinny punk's ass. Thank
You
you.
pull him out of his
Wait till
car.
Bulldog falls asleep in the car, though.
Yeah. Yeah, because that guy will fuck you all up.
10-4.
I'm going to bed.
Going to bed.
Didn't he? Didn't Bulldog went
No,
go sleep in the car?
Like, what if the
Or
Bulldog
was it the
doesn't
kid?
go to
I
sleep?
thought
I'll
the
take
kid
care
was
of that
drunk.
part. Hey, Bulldog, look
You're
over there.
right.
Slip something in his
I
drink.
thought, no, Bulldog was there,
Yeah.
but the kid, I think, passed out, and they put him in the car.
Yeah, it was the kid
They
that
tucked
passed
him
out
in
in
like
the
a
car.
little baby.
Yeah.
in the car.
Bulldog was
like
inside
a
the
little
bar.
tiny baby.
Yeah, Bulldog gave nothing. He's like, come on, let's calm down, fellas, please, please.
Yeah, I know.
And Sean's just getting fucking car doors like racked in his head.
Slam right in his head.
Come on, guys. Oh, fucking Sean's head.
That's why his eyes like
Come on,
that.
guys. So
I'm a lover, not a fighter.
Yeah.
I didn't want any part of this tonight. I can't get in trouble, guys. This is fucked up, guys.
Just kidding. We love British Bulldog. British Bulldog's he's just fucked up.
He would do that, just screaming from the
Oh,
sidelines.
fuck, guys. Come on.
Oh,
He's all Sean. Actually, if anything, Bulldog probably would have wanted Shawn Michaels' ass kicked too. Shit.
He would lose the
Fucker.
title to Scott Hall, would lose the Intercontinental Championship to Goldust at the Royal Rumble in 1996. Ramon was originally scheduled to face Goldust in a rematch for the title at WrestleMania 12 in a Miami street fight, but Hall was suspended for 6 weeks by the WWF due to his drug use, and he was leaning towards leaving for WCW. He returned to WWF television on April 7 in Your House of 1996, where he lost to Vader, and that was his last pay-per-view match with the company. While we've been telling this whole story of him, he became associated with a backstage group known as the Clique, also consisting of Kevin Nash, Paul Levesque, which was Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Shawn Michaels, and Sean Waltman, who was a 1-2-3 Kid. Then that led them to be involved at a house show at Madison Square Garden. They were involved in the infamous curtain call situation at Madison Square Garden because Hall and fellow Clique member Kevin Nash were departing for WCW. The pair, along with Michaels and Levesque, broke kayfabe, which means they broke character, and they all embraced in the ring together. And one person's shaky hand cam
God
caught it
forbid.
Yeah, back in this day, there was no cell phones or anything like that. Someone actually snuck a hand cam into the arena, and it literally was the only footage that ever exists from this because WWF cameras weren't rolling because it was a house show. Some fans' little fucking pocket flip, those little cameras where you flip the lens open, they had that, and that is literally the only. So it's no surprise now when somebody records something on their phone nowadays how fast it goes viral. Anybody who is shocked at that, I'm like, no. Let me tell you a little something about the curtain call where someone's fucking hand recorder was in their pocket when they snuck it in the arena. And the only existing video of this is just that one angle from that one fan towards the top of the arena where he's all like screaming in the background like a little fanboy. And that went viral before viral was even a thing like back then.
And got Triple H buried for 4 months or whatever.
And I also found out that originally he was supposed to do, what we found out was going to be the Hollywood Backlot Brawl at WrestleMania 12, but it was supposed to be a Miami street fight.
That would have been awesome.
It was supposed to be a Miami street fight against Scott Hall.
That was Roddy
but
Piper, yeah.
because he got suspended, due to the violation of WWE drug policy. I think it was like he tested positive for pot or something. but Hall was like, they knew I was leaving the company, so they weren't.
He did that on purpose.
Yeah.
He did it on purpose.
So they brought Roddy Piper back, and we got the Hollywood Blackout Brawl, which was great. I loved the Hollywood I thought it was awesome. And it was like really the first WWF cinematic match, was it not? I think I heard on Bruce Pritchard's like, yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
So it's kind of crazy. So either way, it was going to be ahead of its time because they were going to film the Miami street fight. They're going to dress up a soundstage like the streets of Miami, I'm sure, or some crazy shit. So so they were probably going to do something really cool with Ramon. But alas, he lost to Vader at April in Your House 7. And that was it for him on WWF television. Now we're going to jump into some crazy shit. World Championship Wrestling, Scott Hall's return to WCW. Hall's first appearance on WCW television after leaving WWF was an unannounced promo that he cut in the ring on May 27th, 1996 on an episode of Nitro. He walked down the stairs of the arena, jumped over the guardrail in street clothes, in fashionable denim jeans and vest.
yeah.
And claimed to be an outsider. And we all know that promo. I'm going to put it right here.
You people, you know who I am. But you don't know why I'm here.
Are we going to get security here?
Where is billionaire Ted? Where is the Nacho Man? That punk can't even get in the building. Me, I go wherever I want, whenever I want.
Like, they didn't do any promos. He didn't come through the ramp or anything like that. It was just something we had never seen before. And we are talking here in a legacy of Scott Hall, that Scott Hall was the guy that essentially, I know shots had been fired because Bischoff was reading results before this and stuff and blah, blah, blah. And the Luger thing happened in 95. But this was really like, this was the first real angle where it wasn't, nobody was in character. Nobody was a gimmick. He came out, he jumped over the guardrail. It was fast. They rushed to commercial. They didn't really talk about it when they came back. And then Bischoff talked about it at the end of the program. And that's when Hall came on. And it was just sort of so surreal to me as a fan here.
Talk about his big surprise.
I can't not talk about this moment enough, even though it's been played and talked about forever. It legitimately is, one of the biggest moments in wrestling history, without question.
And just that alone is worthy of Hall of Fame, is worthy of a legacy episode, is worthy of all the accolades that you can possibly get as a wrestler without having the one, WWE and WCW world champion. I remember, I still remember this vividly, like to this day. I was like 8-9 years old right here. Me and my brothers were playing with our little action figures while watching WCW because my dad would always go to WCW. He would always watch it, but switch back and forth between channels. But I just remember, and then that happened, and we stopped playing, and we were just with our jaw, like our mouths wide open, watching the TV, like we couldn't believe it. And even my dad was like, "What the hell?" He's like, "That Razor!" And it was a crazy moment, man. It seemed real. I was a young kid, so for me, it was real.
We talk about how valuable it was for him to be pushed. Like Craig talked about the details of Vince. You're going to hand your chain to the ring side person. You're going to say, if something happens to these, something's going to happen to you. You're going to do this. You're going to bring a toothpick. And then you take all of that away in 1996 because it was a different world than 1992. A different wrestling climate, a different climate here in America.
Everything.
And it's what the crowd wanted. And then you strip all that down. And Bischoff's the one that just put him out there in just street clothes. It's so amazing to talk about Scott Hall's beginning on the big time in WWF as Razor, and then this character, this just regular Scott Hall character. They're so opposite in every way. With the promotion, the costumes, everything was just completely opposite. It's crazy. Later on, they will debut Kevin Nash. By the way, 2 weeks after that, Kevin Nash debuts again, throwing the wrestling community in a huge frenzy at this point.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about Nitro. At the Great American Bash in 1996, Kevin Nash powerbombed Eric Bischoff, who was only an interviewer at this time. A third string interviewer, by the way. Nobody knew that he was really executive vice president unless you read the credits at the end of every WCW pay-per-view. Threw and powerbombed Bischoff through a table on the side of the stage. I cannot tell you how this affected me as a guy. I think I was 19 here. And I'd been a wrestling fan since I was 9, 10 years old. And seeing this was the most realist thing I'd ever seen. But it shocked me. I remember watching this pay-per-view going, oh my, I've never seen anything like that in my life. And it made you afraid of Hall and Nash. It made you scared of them a little bit. They weren't like a monster like Vader. They weren't Abdul the Butcher. They weren't, part of our scariest wrestler episodes that we did this last Halloween. They weren't anything like that. It scared you because they were real, because they were both in street clothes, Nash with a ridiculous polo tucked in to his jeans. But I mean, like, he powerbombed Bischoff into the table, and you'd never seen an announcer really be touched. Nobody ever touched Gene Okerlund.
You didn't know
Nobody
where the line
touched,
was at this point. Like, you just really, and which was the best part of wrestling, when you're not sure what's real and what's not. And that's when wrestling's always the best. And even though it was a complete work, we didn't know. We had no clue.
Now we look back and it's all silliness to us because it happens all the time now. But
good.
This was such an amazing real angle. At Bash of the Beach on July 7th, 1996, Nash and Hall, were known as the Outsiders, challenged Sting, Lex Luger, and Randy Savage, and promised a third man, a mystery partner. Everybody knows that turned out to be Hulk Hogan. Everybody knows arguably the biggest faction in wrestling history on a mainstream basis. The New World Order was formed, the NWO. We don't have to talk about that. We talked about that 100 times.
Nah,
everybody's talked about
Hogan,
that before.
especially.
It was an amazing moment for sure. But now Hall is part of this trio that re-revolutionized wrestling, where WCW, not WWF, was the #1 American wrestling company. And it's crazy to even talk about now. For the next 2 years, the NWO would reignite the American wrestling industry. Before DX, before The Rock, before Mr. McMahon versus Steve Austin, there was the NWO getting on magazine covers, cover a TV guide, remember that? Presenting awards at award shows, being guest stars on MTV, anything else you could think of, getting slimed on Nickelodeon, like whatever. Like, they started an Attitude Era on a large scale before the Attitude Era in the WWF even was thought of, before they even coined that phrase. They started this real edgy feeling to American wrestling, and I'll never forget it. It was an amazing time to live through. The Outsiders, Hall and Nash, would branch off while Hulk Hogan would win the World Heavyweight Championship. Of course, they formed a tag team called the Outsiders within the NWO. They won the WCW Tag Team Championship from the Harlem Heat at Halloween Havoc 1996. We were there live, weren't we, Craig? We saw that live.
Parker gave him the cane, Tony. He gave him the cane. Parker bagged off and gave him the cane to save his own hide as Parker scurries back to the locker room. He is right Sherry there to defend herself. Colonel Parker's gone. He's left the arena.
That was either a white tornado or his suit leaving here. But something went down that aisle awful quick.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, no! The worst could have happened has happened.
We've got new champs.
I tell you what, guys.
The Outsiders prevail.
Hall and Nash, the new WCW World Tag Team Champion.
Now you have Hulk Hogan as World Heavyweight Champion, and the Outsiders were WCW Tag Team Champions, taking over the company. The Outsiders held the World Tag Team Championship from February the 24th, 1997 to October of 1997. They lost it briefly after 96 to some shenanigans, but Bischoff would always find a way to get the titles back around the Outsiders' waist. It was just part of pissing you off, because during that time, Bischoff joined the NWO, and now you realized how the NWO was able to infiltrate the company to begin with. Why Scott Hall was allowed to jump over the rail and not be bothered by security. It's because Bischoff was in it the whole time. So between that time, they would face other tag teams like the Steiner Brothers, which they had good feuds with the Steiners, the Nasty Boys, Lex Luger and the Giant, and different combinations of the Four Horsemen. In May 1997, Hall and Nash teamed with Masahiro Chono to defeat the Steiner Brothers and Kenji Muto, better known as the Great Muta, in New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong Style Evolution show at the Osaka Dome. Which is another awesome note to say that they went over there, and you always hear about other wrestlers going over there, or WWF doing a tour of Japan. Here, WCW always having a strong relationship for years with New Japan Pro Wrestling, and it's kind of cool to see the NWO. Actually, both guys, Masahiro Chono and Great Muta, would become part of the NWO, which is kind of interesting. The Outsider would also use the Freebird rule to defend their title with Nash and Six. They would substitute Six, and I should say, if Nash was out with an injury or Hall was out with an injury. Hall mostly wrestled singles matches towards the last quarter of 1997. He also won the 60-man Battle Royal at World War III in November of 97 to earn a shot.
That's a big deal. That was a big deal.
Yeah, to earn a shot at the WCW World Heavyweight Champion down the road. On January 12th, 1998, episode of Nitro, the Outsiders defeated the Steiner Brothers to win the WCW World Tag Team Championship for the 4th time. Hall also wrestled Larry Zbyszko that month, a week later, I want to say, or 2 weeks later, at Sold Out of 1998.
Sold Out was always a good show.
And a lot of people don't talk about that because I talked about him being very good friends with Larry Zbyszko earlier. Zbyszko was just a commentator here, and they did this cool angle that they sort of like kind of let breathe for like 6 months, where Hall would come up and fuck with him at the commentating booth and all that stuff, and then the crowd started chanting Larry like real loud and all that stuff, and he ended up facing
I remember
Hall.
that, yeah.
And I want to believe it was a disqualification. I want to believe because I think Dusty Rhodes turned and cost.
When he joined the NWO.
Yeah, he joined the NWO there. So
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
When he joined the NWO, he got on commentator really quick. He's all, "You just flushed your career down the drain, kid." Like to himself, like I told Hogan.
So a lot of people don't talk about the Hall and the Zbyszko feud around this time, which was pretty cool, actually. It was really good. And again, really unselfish for Scott. A lot of athletes would be like, I don't want to fight Zbyszko, right? He's fucking old and I don't do that. But like Hall was like, no, we could do some cool stuff. You know, Hall was always like, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, later when we wrap it up and talk about what kind of a great wrestling mind he had. But he always understood heat. He always understood like how to, is the crowd responding to that? Well, I'm going to do that, May. That's all for me. I'll do it. Like, so it was awesome. Scott Hall was legitimately taken off TV for a short while and forced by WCW to enter rehab in 1997 and early 98 after he and Nash showed up at the March 16th, 1998 episode of Nitro, heavily intoxicated under the influence
Why did
of
Hall always
painkillers.
get in trouble and never Nash? That's what I want to know.
I think they all just hit it well. And I really, let me take that back. I believe Hall was sick. I don't want to get in a political discussion about what people think about drug addicts. Some people think that it's their choice. Other people understand that it's an illness, and it's once you get attacked, once it grabs you, and it could be a chemical imbalance that Hall always had. It could be from that fateful night when he killed some other person in self-defense.
Yep.
It could be a combination of everything. Being a military brat, moving once a year for 15 years. Maybe not having a stable home life. I mean, I'm not sure because I didn't include that in the notes, but I think that was also a big deal as well. That it obviously affected his marriages and his life too and stuff. And so you got to figure, I think that's why it hit him harder. So to answer your question, Craig, I really believe he was just too much of a spectacle behind the scene. And so I guess, like I said, him and Nash showed up here at March 16th, the 98 episode of Nitro.
Was Nash forced in rehab too?
No, just Scott Hall was.
It was probably like Nash probably wasn't as bad, He probably got a little slap on the wrist, but he probably wasn't like where Hall. It appeared that it was a big problem and really probably affecting his life in a very bad way.
Yeah.
So what do we do when that happens, guys? We make it an on-screen storyline where Scott Hall would show up intoxicated, which I hate talking about because I think that's a bunch of shit.
No, it's always worked. I think you do it with Jake, you do it with Hawk, you do it with Hall.
Right?
It's always really worked. I mean,
it's
classy
so funny
as hell.
that a lot of people shit solely on Bischoff when they forgot that Jake Roberts and Jerry Lawler, was it the same year? No, it was 96. Jerry Lawler and Jake Roberts had a feud in 96 where Jerry Lawler tried to pour Jack Daniels down his throat because Jake came back and he was talking about, finding God and he's sober now and all that stuff or whatever. At Slamboree of 1998, Hall returned to team with Kevin Nash for a tag team title defense against Sting and the Giant. Hall turned on Nash, costing them the title, and switched sides to align himself with Hulk Hogan, who was part of a splinter faction of the NWO called NWO Hollywood, where Nash was on the side of the NWO Wolfpack. They had split at this point. On the July 6th episode of Monday Nitro, Hall was handpicked by Hogan to wrestle United States Heavyweight Champion Bill Goldberg. In that famous night where Goldberg won the title. If Hall lost the match, Goldberg was going to get a shot at Hogan in the main event later that night, and of course, Goldberg won.
This offense is a good defense. Seeing that from Scott Hall, he put him down.
This could be it. This could be it.
Backdrop suplexed him. He's got the cover. They had the cover for only a fleeting one count, but that was as close as anyone's gotten to Goldberg right there. Now the chant starts.
Listen to it.
He's trying to shake it off, but I tell you, you can see it rocks his head back. Those are hard, heavy hits from Scott Hall. But he's made it to his feet.
Oh, he did?
I went back and I watched that match, and it was really bad. Really bad. And it was not Hall's fault. I mean, you watch him try to tame this crazy wild stallion Goldberg. It's hard to watch. It really is. Not again, Hall didn't do anything wrong. He was just, you see him try to talk to him, you see him try to calm him down, and Goldberg just was so fucking uncooperative in this match. It's hard to watch like Scott Hall have a bad match, and it was not his fault. I mean, Goldberg was absolutely fucking terrible like in this match. It was really bad.
Oh, is that?
At Starrcade 1998, Hall disguised as a security guard used a stun gun on WCW World Heavyweight Champion Goldberg and cost Goldberg to the match. Kevin Nash would pin Goldberg, ending his undefeated streak and winning the WCW Heavyweight Championship. Not seeing the interference though, Nash capitalized on that powerbomb pin Goldberg, so he was playing like he didn't know at that time. Hall and Nash were aligned again in January of 1999. The two NWO factions rejoined in the famous Finger Poke of Doom Monday Nitro, where everything seemed okay, even though Tony Schiavone gave away the ending to a pre-taped Raw, and it turns out that hundreds of thousands of fans turned over and watched Raw and helped Raw win the ratings that night. Hall would feud with Goldberg at the beginning of 1999 and faced him in the ladder match on January 19 at Sold Out. He lost the match when Goldberg ascended the ladder to get the taser and use it on him. Super stupid. At Super Brawl 9, Hall defeated Rowdy Piper for the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship shortly after he suffered a foot injury, which forced him to forfeit the title. Hall was not seen again until October 1999, when he and Kevin Nash began sitting at ringside during WCW television, proclaiming the band was getting back together. It's all a blur here, folks. Just bear with me. White knuckle this. Hall and Nash teamed to defeat Bret Hart and Goldberg on the December 13th episode of Monday Nitro, winning the WCW World Tag Team Championship for the sixth time together. Soon afterwards, Hall was injured again, and the tag team title was vacated. After the NWO returned in December of 1999, Hall joined Kevin Nash, Bret Hart, and Jeff Jarrett, and Scott Steiner in what was coined NWO 2000, and their colors were black and silver.
That was the silver, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was black and silver.
It was yellow.
Hall feuded with WCW World Heavyweight Champion Sid Vicious and NWO teammate Jeff Jarrett over the title. Sid pinned Hall in a match.
So they had
also
silver
involving
T-shirts for NWO 2000?
Black and silver.
They were all black, but the NWO was in silver, not white.
Because it's 2000. It's futuristic, man.
It was silver. Sid would pin Hall at Super Brawl in February of 2000 in that match.
You drug addict. I'll stab you.
No.
This was Hall's last appearance in WCW.
This is your last match, Hall.
After that, he would actually go to ECW for a cup of coffee. After departing WCW in early 2000, Hall was inactive for several months. On November 10th, 2000, he made a surprise appearance at an Extreme Championship Wrestling house show.
I don't remember any of this at all.
I just remember videos and pictures. He teamed with Jerry Lynn, and he defeated Just Incredible and Rhino. Cuz I know you have something to say on this.
Yeah, there was another. He actually made his debut before that. I don't remember the date specifically, but I want to say it was in the ECW arena, because on this one it looked like it was in a high school gym.
Yeah,
with
it was a house
Jerry
show.
Lynn. Yeah, and the other one was at the ECW arena because it had the brick entryway and everything.
Yeah.
So basically, it starts off. You just hear Fuji's "Ready or Not" playing. And then he comes out, and that crowd just freaking pops like crazy.
He comes out to Fuji's "Ready or Not"?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
And that crowd just goes insane. They're chanting "Holy shit." They couldn't believe he was there. He goes in the ring. He does his little, and then they get louder. They get even louder when he does that. And he fights actually Big Sally, the big old fat dude that would always interfere in the FBI, the full-blooded Italian with Little Guido. He fought him, and he actually put him over. He on his debut in ECW, he let Big Sally fucking pin him in the middle of the ring.
Now we get into the second run with WWF. After WCW had folded, after everything had happened, after all the contracts ran out. 6 years after ever even being in the WWF, Hall returns. February the 17th, 2002, No Way Out pay-per-view. He was reunited with Kevin Nash and Hollywood Hogan.
It's still 20 years ago.
Repackaged version to inject a lethal dose of poison into the WWF.
Yes.
Hey, yo.
We're not the bad guys. We're fans. We just want the opportunity to work with some of the great WWF superstars. But the point is, we don't want any trouble.
They did promo that pay-per-view. That was a really cool moment. Hall, Nash, and Hogan, all three got pretty big pops. It was the first time that you had seen them since the Monday Night Wars. Everything was over. Like I said, all the purchasing was done. It was kind of surreal to see them. And they had a lot of heat in back because, that award was real to people, especially when WWF was on its ass and in like 96, 97, when NWO was just beating the shit out of WWF and Nitro was killing the ratings. Like, there was a lot of nasty shit thrown out by Bischoff. And and I don't think Hogan, Hall, and Nash were really not violent, but like nasty towards the company. No. I think they took pot shots, but there's a famous story where Bischoff, remember when Bischoff came and he challenged McMahon on the air, said, join me at the pay-per-view here and fight me for real. And Hogan was in the limo and he was going over that. And Hogan was the one that spoke up. He's like, I wouldn't do that. And Bischoff's like, why? And he was like, no, Vince will fight you. Vince will kick your ass. He will fight you. Like, he will not die.
Hogan was even serious. Yeah. He didn't do his brother. Don't do that, brother. He was like, you don't want to do that, brother. That's not a good idea,
he
brother.
Even said, he's like, Vince will die before he like files bankruptcy or admits defeat. Like, Vince will never die. Like,
he's gonna come kick your ass, brother.
Of all times, so I think Hogan, Hall, and Nash always respected Vince. But,
of course.
But the locker room and the atmosphere from the fans, we saw a war, right? For the whole previous 3 or 4 years. So we saw this war. So to see the NWO back in this ring was crazy. On an episode of Monday Night Raw on February 25th, the NWO would attack Stone Cold Steve Austin. Hall destroyed a cinder block on Austin's leg. Hate that segment. On the March 4th episode of Raw, Hall wrestled his first WWF match since May of 96, defeating Spike Dudley. At WrestleMania 18, Hall lost to Stone Cold Steve Austin from his two Stone Cold Stunners.
That wasn't a good match either.
It wasn't really a good match. However, a lot of people downplay Scott Hall's sell of the stunner.
Hall going for the stunner. He got it. On to the stunner. 2 outs and over. What a stunner. A WrestleMania stunner. Right hits the stunner. And it's over. Stone Cold has been stopped.
I really enjoyed it.
Two stunners too.
Yeah, everybody always gives The Rock credit for that, and Rock does an amazing sell, but Hall actually did a really fucking cool sell on that last one.
What's the story behind why they didn't mesh well together? They could not agree on.
I think it was just
Austin
Hall,
Austin was hurt here and pissed off, and Austin I think really wanted Hogan when Hogan came back, but The Rock ended up getting Hogan, and so it was like they gave him to Hall. Then that whole story where Hall was on that, what's that alcohol medication? When you take it, if you take any alcohol, it makes you sick.
Antabuse.
It's for, yes. So Scott Hall was on Antabuse, and I don't know the logistics of it. Bruce Pritchard actually makes Conrad really mad when Bruce Pritchard sides with Vince on this. They do a vignette that involves alcohol. Stone Cold Steve Austin ends up stunning Hall in the ring and then pouring beer all over his face.
Yeah.
And Hall said that the company knew that he was on Adderall. But everybody else said he never told us that. So it's a whole controversy thing here where you have a recovering alcoholic in here on a drug that makes it to where you violently get ill and throw up if any alcohol touches your lips. And then Austin's pouring beer on his face. Even though Conrad's point was even if you didn't know he was on this medication, you knew he was a recovering alcoholic. Why work in dumping alcohol on his face into a gimmick ever? And of course, Bruce Pritchard was being a dick about it, and then they actually had a legit fight, which was awesome. But anyway, he did lose to Austin. They tried to get Hall in there. Austin wasn't game. Let's be honest. It didn't work out for a few reasons. It didn't work out because Hall was probably not the best Hall that you could offer.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Austin was not into it at all.
You have grouchy Austin too.
Well, you know,
you have grouchy
funny.
Austin. Yeah.
I went back and I like watched, from like that point, like when they came in, the matches that he was having against guys like Crash. Like he actually had a really good match with Crash Holly on SmackDown.
And Spike Dudley, we were talking about. Spike Dudley was cool.
Spike Dudley as well. Yeah, he had a good match. But I think he more squashed Spike. But anyways, what I was trying to say is like from that match and on, because he was involved with like Stone Cold versus, him versus Stone Cold at WrestleMania. There was like tag matches with Stone Cold and The Rock versus the NWO, different variations of the NWO. All Hall was really doing throughout each match was he was punching chopping, fall away slam, punching, chopping.
Right.
He wasn't really doing anything. Except for the Crash Holly match. The Crash Holly match was fucking awesome, actually. But yeah, like you could tell it was more like Scott Hall was just kind of phoning it in at that point. And he was probably still, whether he was on that drug or not, if he was probably still doing something else. It just didn't.
And if he wasn't on drugs, he was probably in pain 24/7.
Well, we're going to talk about a famous plane ride, which I think answers all those questions.
Yeah.
So at the end of WrestleMania, when Hogan lost to The Rock, the NWO came out and attacked Hogan, effectively kicking Hogan out of the group. Then on May 5th, on a flight back from England, following a tour involving the Insurrection pay-per-view, which was a United Kingdom only pay-per-view at the time, back to the United States. This plane was dubbed the plane ride from hell. Hall became incredibly intoxicated on this flight. There were allegations against Hall. Again, we're talking about his passing and stuff. We're talking about his legacy. Yeah. There was allegations against him that were ultimately dismissed, I think, or settled out of court. It even says right here the case was ultimately settled out of court. Hall's last appearance for the company was the following night on Raw, wrestling in a 6-man tag with Big Show and X-Pac against Austin, Bradshaw, and Flair, which ended in a no contest, of course. He was released from the promotion the following day due to ongoing issues stemming from his substance abuse.
So sad.
He would go to TNA and various promotions out there. Hall wrestled for TNA part-time between the years of 2002 and 2010. He would team with Nash on and off, even being reunited with Hogan and Bischoff in 2010, even winning the TNA Tag Team Championships at a time there with Nash. During this time, he would return also to WWC in Puerto Rico, which is when he toured earlier in his early career we talked about earlier. He also debuted for Juggalo Championship Wrestling during this time. WWE Hall of Fame, a payday, man, and he's a name. WWE Hall of Fame on March the 24th of 2014. Razor Ramon was announced as the 7th and final inductee into that year's class of WWE Hall of Fame. He was inducted in New Orleans on April 5th, the night before WrestleMania 30. Shawn Michaels, Triple H, X-Pac, and Kevin Nash joined Hall on stage after his speech, reuniting the Clique. WWF promotional material for the event referred to him solely as Razor Ramon, without footage or mention of his work under his real name. I think that's because later they were going to induct him as Scott Hall in the NWO, but I could be wrong. I think Vince knew then we're eventually going to induct the NWO. Let's just do Razor Ramon here at this point. Because if people do remember, I think it was the next year or a couple years later, Kevin Nash was put in as Diesel. So I think they had a plan for re-inducting him later. I think after the first induction, they knew Hall was going to be a 2-time Hall of Famer.
What WrestleMania was San Francisco?
31.
Yeah.
That was the NWO. That was the NWO. No, it wasn't. Actually, NWO was like 2 years ago. It was during the pandemic.
NWO was 2 years ago.
Yeah. At WrestleMania, I think 31 was Nash. I think 31 was Nash, Craig. Sorry, 31 was Nash.
Okay.
So the next year, Nash went in as Diesel. Sorry. You were correct. At WrestleMania 30, Hall, as Razor Ramon, appeared on stage with other Hall of Famers and other inductees to get the accolades from the crowd. Cuz is super annoyed. And because all everybody's doing is playing Razor Ramon's Hall of Fame speech over and over again, or quoting it, and it drives guys crazy.
No, they're
I do. No, I mean, you're not annoyed in the fact that you disrespect the Hall, but it's fucking crazy. You're right. Like every time I go on Instagram or any other place, it's like every fucking post is the quote from his Hall of Fame.
That's the
scroll
quote.
Down, you're just the guy who was the writer for the WWF back then. He posted after Scott Hall died and said, "I was the guy who wrote his speech." So he was like, Scott Hall came up to me immediately and said, "Man, I want my speech to be short. Everybody drones on out here." He's like, "I want my speech to mean something, and I don't want to drone on out here." So
that's cool.
He said Scott Hall already came with bullet points. He's like, I just basically put it together for him. It was all Scott Hall. And Scott Hall knew from the start he did not want. And then he said, if you go back and look at replays, they cut him out getting emotional. But there was a lot of times in that speech where he would break down and kind of lose it a little bit and then shake his head and get back into it. Because he was really emotional because every sentence meant something because Hall purposely wanted it to be short.
Keep it short.
Purpose. Yeah.
And I'm like,
so I thought that was really...
when I met Sean in 95, Sean remembers. Sean remembers.
Flair did a whole legacy of Ric Flair on his Hall of Fame speech.
Yeah. So I admire Hall for that. He appeared on the August 11th, 2014 episode of Raw for the first time since 2002 to reunite the New World Order with Kevin Nash and Hulk Hogan on Hulk Hogan's stupid birthday celebration. Scott Hall was inducted again to the WWE Hall of Fame as a member of the New World Order as part of the class of 2020, which was also booked together with 2021 due to the pandemic.
Two times.
They crammed it together. So 2-time Hall of Famer. He went in as Razor Ramon as a singles wrestler and went in as Scott Hall as a part of the NW Hull. We get into health and
New World Order.
We get into health and personal issues here. Hall's problems with drugs and alcohol were made public in the late 90s and were incorporated into a controversial WCW storyline in 1998, like we talked about. While the storyline was playing out, Hall was legitimately arrested for keying a limousine while intoxicated and outside of a nightclub in Orlando, Florida, causing $2,000 in damages. That's it?
Yeah, come on. They fucking...
Come on.
They wreck a car every SmackDown. What's the problem?
They poured concrete in a fucking Corvette for crying out loud. After his release from TNA in 2010, Hall checked into rehab, paid for by the WWE. Hall checked out of the rehab facility in early October of 2010. Weeks after he checked into rehab, Hall both had a defibrillator and a pacemaker implanted in his chest. He was hospitalized twice in 2010 for double pneumonia. During this time, Hall started having seizures and was soon diagnosed with epilepsy, resulting him requiring to take 11 different medications on a daily basis to treat his heart and seizure problems. On April 6th, 2011, Hall was reportedly taken to the hospital due to a seizure. Hall's representative, I'm not going to say that name, said Hall was in the hospital that night and needed to be treated for extremely low blood pressure. And Hall visits the doctor on a regular basis while recovering from double pneumonia for regular food and blood checkups. 3 days later on TMZ, they reported Hall had been taken to the hospital, treated for cardiac issues, and remained in the hospital for 3 days. According to medical reports, Hall was being treated after overdosing on both opioids and I have no idea. Benzodiazepines? Shit.
Yeah.
It's benzo.
A pretty insane drug. Longtime friend Kevin Nash claimed Hall's substance abuse stemmed from the post-traumatic stress disorder, which I think attributed to the murder, when he was defending himself, the second-degree murder. In March 2022, Hall was hospitalized for falling and breaking his hip. After Hall underwent hip surgery, a blood clot was dislodged, resulting in him suffering 3 heart attacks on March 12th, 2022, after which he was put on life support. As we read from an early tweet from Kevin Nash a day before he passed, his family agreed to assemble at the hospital to say goodbye to him, and they all agreed to take him off life support. He passed away on March 14th of 2022. So that's why we're doing this episode here, it's hard to read a lot of the stuff that he went through. What do you say? Nobody knows what was in his head. Nobody knows how he lived.
That's what I'm saying.
It's easy to shit on somebody who abuses drugs and stuff like that. It's really easy to do that. And then on top of that, we've talked about this off record. He was a prankster, and he also was a shit stirrer. He was famous for going in the back with Kevin Nash, and they would purposely say out loud in the whole locker room full of mid-card wrestlers that are just fucking struggling to make it. Man, Kev, were you disappointed that your WrestleMania payoff was only $300,000? Me too. They did that shit all the time. They're shit stirrers. I was talking to Cuz before we hit record. In their contracts, they had like a progressive clause in their contract, which means if a similar talent of their ilk came into the company and got more money than them, they would get a certain percentage raise to close the gap. So basically, like when Bret Hart got hired at the end of 97 for like $3 million a year for 3 years, which was a total of a $9 million contract, they're like, bring them on, because they knew that they would get a raise. They would purposely go and get people like Scott Steiner and Chris Jericho and all those guys all riled up in the locker room. Yeah, you should. You should go ask Eazy-E for a raise. You absolutely should, knowing that if any of them got raises and it encroached their percent agreement, they would get a raise on top of it. You do hear stories like that, and you get a little, oh, fucking Scott Hall, what a dick, But at the same time, we also talk about the great stuff that he did, what a smart mind he had, and how unselfish he was. Losing to the kid, losing to that guy in ECW, like Cuz said. I want to say he lost to one of the didn't he lose in WCW to one of the Lucha guys? It was part of a storyline, but he ended up taking a pinfall from one of those guys too. Like Hall was always, I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. But he did that. He was always doing that. He was always doing stuff like that. I think Scott Hall sold you a lot in the locker room and made you think a certain way about him on purpose, because he was a lot smarter than what people thought he was. Scott Hall, Craig, I don't know if you want to say anything here, or you want to wait until I do the accomplishments and championships.
Do the championships.
No, all I'll say is He also has the son, Cody Hall, who I don't know who he's doing, but he spent a couple of years trying to mentor him, and I think they had a bit of a fractious relationship back and forth. But I hope that I hope Cody's doing well, and I hope he succeeds, and I hope he
just announced he's taking bookings again.
Taking bookings. So the legacy kind of continues with him. So again,
I hope
Scott Hall is not alone. We talk every single week on every podcast about the tragedies of everything that dedicates their life to the sport, and he was not alone. But Scott had a great mind, happened to be around some of the greatest moments in wrestling, and gets a bit of a bad rap when it comes to just kind of talking about the gossip and the drug addiction. He was one of the worst, but highs and lows in recovery and DDP and getting recovery and really good years of sobriety, and then still being there and having a great mind for the business and helping. And it was always fun. I'll never forget seeing him for his speech. He looked healthy. He had a bit of a gray hair. It reminds me of Jess's picture behind him. And I just want to remember him kind of that way, and then at his best in WrestleMania 10, and when I loved him, and when he was at his best and fully engaged in doing it. So, he was fantastic.
Championships and accomplishments. He was AWA Tag Team Champion with Kurt Hennig. He was TNA Tag Team Champion with Kevin Nash. In WCW, he was World Television Champion. He was the United States Champion 2 times. He won the WCW Tag Team Championship 7 times, 6 with Nash, 1 with the Giant. He was a WWF Intercontinental Champion 4 times. He's a 2-time WWE Hall of Famer. Pro Wrestling Illustrated, he was the most improved wrestler for 1992. He won Match of the Year against Shawn Michaels in the ladder match, WrestleMania 10 in 1994. He was also Tag Team of the Year with Kevin Nash in 1997. The Wrestling Observer Newsletter, he won Match of the Year against Shawn Michaels ladder match 1994, WrestleMania 10, and he won Best Gimmick of 1996 as part of the NWO. I can't add anything else that you guys haven't added already. I'll never forget the 1-2-3 Kid thing on Monday Night Raw. Scott, I will never forget Razor Ramon, the vignettes. I will also never forget him walking down those stairs on that episode of Monday Nitro in 1996 and changing everything. Long before Hogan turned heel, long before anything else like that, you know, the Black and, you know, the Wolf Pack and all that stuff. Scott Hall he kicked it all off by walking down those stairs. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, and cuz I don't think you've given a wrap up. Like, you're a generation behind us. What are your final thoughts on Scott?
You wrap it up, cuz your last comment
here. That's my childhood right there. I know I always say that especially when, you know, it's like the early 90s going into the new generation and the Attitude Era, but Razor, that's, like I said, that's one of my first wrestling t-shirts. Actually, I think that was my very first wrestling t-shirt that I ever got. Was Razor Ramon from the magazines, the WF magazines. But yeah, man, he's so influential, and I think I didn't say it on this episode. I said on the episode I just recorded before we got on that he checks off all the boxes: legacy, trendsetter, ahead of his time. I think who just said it the other day? Was it Dallas Page or Bret Hart, or no, Jericho? I think it's Jericho, the greatest to never win in the championship ever.
Yeah, we never touched on that. He never won any version of a heavyweight championship. Not one. Fucking crazy. Fucking crazy.
The type of human being he was. Like I said, that I know there's all the demons and all that stuff, but like the thing I'm gonna always remember is how he was remembered as like a family man, how he was with fans and kids, how he treated them, how he was just a good guy, and then how he was selfless in the ring with other wrestlers, whether he was listening to their ideas, giving them ideas, or putting them over. What more can you say? He was the perfect pro wrestler, you know?
Yeah.
For audio fans, miss him.
Give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Stitcher.
I think Jess was going to say something.
Google Podcast.
Jess. Sorry, I thought you were about to say something.
No, I said we're going to miss him.
Oh,
gotcha. Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, Dave. I mean, Craig.
Watch the videos on YouTube at our wrestling channel. Social media, give us a follow on Instagram and Twitter at O.W.P 2019. Facebook, Our Wrestling Podcast. This was fun. This was timely and relevant. Hope you guys enjoyed it too. And hope his memory, I don't think it won't fade. I think it's still, a lot of memes are still out there, and a lot of people still love him and will still remember him. So, but I think it was important we did this on the week that he passed. It's relevant. So, All right.
You're
Our
gonna know
Wrestling
what clip to play
Podcast.
right here.
Yeah. Peace out, everybody.
Bad guys, bad times. You know.
Hard work pays off. Dreams come true. Bad times don't last, but bad guys do.